Well, hello wizards, and welcome back to the Academy of Magical Thinking. In our classes so far, we have been doing portrait drawing, landscape art, and silhouette drawings. You've been looking at my artwork so much. Now let's look at some artwork created by students. These students created their own characters like angels and wizards and even their own original characters. Now let's look at some artwork that combines characters and landscape. This artwork is an example of a technique that we're going to use today to create our artwork. It's called collage. Collage is artwork that is made by cutting and pasting different pictures together to make one picture. The artist created their landscape and their characters separately. First they drew their landscape and then they collaged or glued and pasted their character into their landscape. Well, wizards, it's almost time for our classes at the Academy of Magical Thinking to end. But before we do, let's finish up with some final projects. I would like you to get all of the work that you did in our past classes. Do you have your landscape art? What about your silhouette drawings? Oh, I even have my torn paper when I made my mountains in order to do my landscape art. Do you have that? Do you have all of these things? For this lesson, you'll need any artwork that you've already done, a piece of paper, a pencil with an eraser, some scissors, and some glue. Since we're going to be using the collage technique, if you have your silhouette drawings, get them out and let's start cutting. To make it simpler, the first thing I do is cut along the folds so that each of the character is in a square. Now that I've gotten rid of all of that extra paper, it makes it a lot easier for me to cut out each character. I cut as close to my character as possible without cutting off anything. When I've done the best I can, I put it aside and start on the next one. Look at that goblin trying to get away. Once I have all 4 characters cut out as best I can, I put them on the side. Now I want to remember how I'm going to do the collage technique. I'm glad I have some student artwork to remind me of how to do the collage. I see that first they drew the background and then they glued or collaged their character onto the setting. Okay, now that I understand how they created their collage, it's time for us to create our collage. Now that we have our characters, it's time to create our setting. We're going to create some new landscape art. That'll be our setting for our character. Do you have those 2 torn pieces of paper that look like mountains? My mountains are too white and they need some color, so I'm going to shade them in. This is also a review lesson, so remember to practice some of the techniques that you've already learned, like shading. And also, we want to create texture on our mountain. Do you remember how we created texture before? Once I've shaded in my mountains, it's time to collage them or glue and paste them onto a separate piece of paper. So I get out my separate piece of paper, then I collage the first row of mountains onto the paper. After I've done that, it's time to glue the second row of mountains onto the paper. When I glue one row of mountains on top of another row of mountains, it makes my picture look more 3D. I can see mountains in the front and in the back. It's hard for me to see my mountains, they're kind of blending in, so I'm going to separate them by drawing an outline and showing each row of mountain. After that, I'm going to make it even clearer by making my mountains in the back darker. So I'm going to shade them in very, very dark and leave the mountains in front light. That way I can see that there's mountains in front and mountains in the back. Then I've left enough room to make a horizon line. I draw a line right across my paper, and that's going to separate my mountains from my water. Ooh, I'm going to add lots of waves in my water. Now that I've created my mountains and my water, I think it'd be nice to have some trees in my forest. So I start on one side, remember, with the trunk, and then the two branches coming out, it looks like a Y, and then I'll fill it in with lots of other branches. I also have to shade in my tree very, very dark so you can't see anything behind my tree. Next, I make another tree on the other side. And in between the trees, on the horizon line, I put lots of grass. Remember, it's a windy day and it's out in nature, so nobody's mowed the lawn, so the grass is wild and free. Now that I have my setting, I can play with my characters. I place them all around the setting to see where I want to glue them. Once I've decided where I want them, I can collage my characters onto my setting. Once I've glued all of my characters down, it's time for me to add some details. I want my merman's tail to look like it's inside the water. So I erased the part of the tail that would be in the water. That way it looks like my tail is really underneath the water. When I was cutting my characters out, I have some white paper around them and it makes them look a little bit separate from my setting. So in order to blend them into my setting, I'm going to smudge around them. That way it looks like they're part of the setting and not just cut out and pasted on the setting. Sometimes when I smudge, I lose a little bit of details in the character. If that happens, I just go over the characters to sharpen them and make them a lot clearer. Look at my fingers. They're all gray from all the smudging and all the pencil. That's okay. I'm an artist, so I know that it's possible to get dirty and all I have to do is wash my hands after. So I'm going to finish this piece and then clean up afterwards. I did it, and just in time. It's almost time to eat, and my mommy likes me to have clean hands, so I'm going to go and wash my hands. So goodbye for now, wizards. I'll see you next time at the Academy of Magical Thinking.